You've probably said something small that turned into something huge. A comment misread, a door slammed too hard, a joke that landed wrong. Within an hour, two people who liked each other yesterday aren't speaking. It feels almost embarrassing looking back. But the real answer for why this happens is far stranger than embarrassment. Two nations once did the exact same thing, and they nearly went to war because of it. Over a pig. In June of 1859, on a small island off the coast of what is now Washington State, an American farmer named Lyman Cutler found a pig rooting through his garden. The pig belonged to a British trading company. Cutler had complained before. Nothing changed. So that morning he raised his rifle and shot it. That's the spark. The island was San Juan Island, and at the time nobody was entirely sure who owned it. The border between American and British territory, drawn years earlier in a treaty, had used vague language about the channel, separating the mainland from Vancouver Island. There were two channels. The treaty didn't specify which one, so both nations claimed the same strip of land, and both had citizens living on it, farming it, trading on it. Into that uncertainty, a single dead pig landed like a lit match. The British authorities threatened to arrest Cutler. American settlers on the island, already nervous about British claims to the territory, panicked. They asked for military protection. The U.S. Army sent troops. Britain responded by sending warships. Within weeks, 461 American soldiers were dug into earthworks on one end of the island. Facing 5 British warships carrying over 2,100 men and 70 guns, anchored just offshore, ask yourself something. How does a property dispute over one dead animal end with thousands of armed men staring at each other across a beach? The historian Mike Voury, who has spent much of his career researching the San Juan Island standoff for the National Park Service, has traced exactly how fast the escalation happened. Within a matter of weeks, what began as a local squabble over trespassing livestock became a genuine international incident, discussed in cabinets in Washington and London. Both governments were terrified of losing face. Neither wanted to be the one who backed down first, especially not over something as small as this. And that, it turns out, is precisely why it got so large. The smaller the original cause, the harder it becomes to justify retreating from it once pride gets involved. There's a name for this pattern. Psychologist and conflict researcher Dean Pruitt spent decades studying how disputes escalate. And one of his central findings was that conflicts rarely grow because the original issue matters more over time. They grow because each side's actions provoke a slightly bigger reaction from the other side, and neither side wants to be the one who de-escalates first, because de-escalating can look like losing. A shot pig becomes a diplomatic incident. A diplomatic incident becomes fortified positions. Fortified positions become warships. Nobody planned this. Nobody wanted this. It just kept adding one more turn of the ratchet. So did the war happen? Here's the twist that makes this story worth remembering. It didn't. Not a single human being was killed in the entire standoff. The only casualty of the so-called pig war was the pig itself. For 13 years afterward, both nations kept small joint military camps on the island. English and American soldiers technically prepared for conflict, living close enough to visit each other for holidays and shared meals. Historian Scott Kaufman, who wrote one of the most detailed accounts of the dispute, describes something almost absurd about those years. Soldiers from two supposedly hostile nations organizing foot races and drinking together while their governments back home debated the fate of the island. You'd expect an armed standoff to end in gunfire. Instead, it ended in arbitration. In 1872, both countries agreed to let a neutral third party settle it, Kaiser Wilhelm I of Germany. He appointed a commission, they reviewed the treaty language, and they ruled in favor of the United States. San Juan Island became American territory. The British packed up. The Americans stayed. And the whole affair quietly became a historical footnote. The war where the only blood spilled belonged to a pig that was already dead by breakfast. Why does this story feel so familiar, even though almost nobody remembers it happened? Because the shape of it repeats constantly, just at a smaller scale. You felt the pull of it yourself. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. It's nothing, really. 10 seconds of your day. But your hand is already on the horn, your heart rate is already up, and some old, fast part of your brain has already decided this is a threat worth responding to. Neuroscientists studying the amygdala, the almond-shaped structure that triggers your fight-or-flight response, have shown that it reacts to social provocation almost as quickly as it reacts to physical danger. Your brain, in that half-second, genuinely cannot tell the difference between someone endangering your life and someone bruising your ego. That's what happened on San Juan Island, just wearing military uniforms instead of car horns. Nobody there was afraid of the pig. They were afraid of what backing down might mean. And once soldiers and warships entered the picture, retreating stopped being about a pig at all. It became about who would look weak first. You do this too, on a much smaller stage. An argument with a partner about who left the dishes in the sink stops being about dishes within about 4 sentences. A disagreement with a coworker over one line in an email becomes somehow a referendum on whether they respect you. The original issue was never really the issue. It was just the first domino. Here's the part that should make you feel better, not worse. The pig war ended without a single shot fired at another human being, not because the tension disappeared, but because someone eventually chose to hand the decision to a neutral party instead of letting pride keep escalating it. 2 nations who had spent 13 years bristling at each other found a way to let go of the standoff without either side collapsing in humiliation. Arbitration gave both governments a way out that didn't look like defeat. That's the piece missing from most modern arguments. You rarely get a Kaiser Wilhelm standing by to referee your disagreements. But you can borrow the same idea. The way out of an escalating conflict is rarely proving you were right from the beginning. It's finding a way for both people to step back without it feeling like losing. So the next time something small sets you off, and you feel that old amygdala flicker, that ancient alarm bell going off over something that will not matter in a week, remember the pig. Remember that 2 world powers once nearly went to war, spent 13 years in armed standoff, and mobilized thousands of soldiers, all because neither side wanted to be the first to walk away from something that, from the very beginning, was never actually about the pig at all. You said something small today. It turned into something huge. Somewhere in your chest, a 200-year-old instinct is telling you this is a battle worth having. It usually isn't. It almost never was.